Hi, good morning. We are live for our first live virtual field trip from the Cape Fear Botanical Garden. I'm Barbara and I'm the Environmental Education Manager here at the garden.
Hi guys, I'm Erica. I'm an education specialist and I'm going to be helping Barbara out today.
So we want to show you some of the really cool things that we have here at the garden, and we also want to take a lot of questions and comments and things that you guys want to hear about, so let us know in the comments. And I think we're ready to get started. All right, come on.
There was just a cardinal sitting at this bird feeder a second ago, but he flew away. I think it might be because we were walking over. But if we look real close, we might be able to find a dove. It looks like they're not here right now, but we'll find some birds later.
This right here is the cypress tree pond. You can see there's actually a goose nesting out there. You can just see a little bit of it. You might see it as we come around too. Our cypress trees are a really great example of a needle-leaved tree that's still deciduous and loses their leaves in winter, so they haven't grown back yet. We'll walk this way around towards where they're working on the new children's garden. It'll be upcoming.
Does anybody know what might live in this pond here? So we've definitely got turtles. Sometimes when we're walking around on the grassy areas, we'll even see them come up for a nice sun bath. And they'll be stretching their necks up towards the sun to get all of that nice warmth on their skin. But sometimes we have to bring them back to the edge of the water just so they stay safe.
There you go, you can see the goose a little bit here. This stroll here is our pollinator stroll. So all the plants that have been planted around here are good for butterflies to drink and bees to come to, and it's really important to support our pollinators. 1 out of every 3 bites of food that you eat is actually something you can harvest.
You've probably eaten some.
So right here we have one of the magnolia trees blooming. It's actually really beautiful right now. A little bit in the back there with the pink and the white bloom. Camellia trees are actually, these are ornamental varieties, but in Asia, camellia trees are actually the source of our tea leaves. So there's another thing that might have be related to your breakfast.
We've got the bamboo forest. If you've ever been to the garden on one of our field trips, you've gotten to go through here. Does anybody know where bamboo comes from?
China.
Exactly, yes. Does anybody know who eats bamboo?
Koala bears.
We've got... Close, yeah. Pandas eat bamboo. Now, when you get out of that crazy forest in there, you're gonna come over here and see this on the ground. So bamboo is actually an extremely invasive species, and if you look down, you can see how it's pushing up on this concrete and it's trying to come out and go out into the rest of the forest over here, but we're trying to keep it contained. This is a really good example of it. Strong roots pushing up on this concrete. Bamboo is not from North America at all.
But it is the fastest growing plant on Earth. That is pretty cool to see. We are coming up here on a little fountain and some very nice flowers. Alright, so we can stop up right here by this fountain. How do you guys think that they might have gotten the water to be able to come up through the rock here? So it's actually pretty tricky. If you tried to drill through the rock with a regular drill, you would actually break your drill. So what they had to do in order to make this was put a diamond bit on the drill. Diamond is the hardest mineral on Earth. And so by putting a diamond bit on the drill, they were able to drill through the rock, so there's a pump underneath that pumps our water up through there.
Enough, these bushes are going to start emitting a really beautiful fragrance. If you come visit the garden when you get a chance, you might get to smell bananas, and you can smell it all the way from the front door on some days.
So right here we have some new ferns coming up, and you can actually see the curled up fern fronds there. So what they do is they actually grow longer on one side first and then the other side, so that they'll unfurl as they grow, and once they're a little further along, they'll unfurl like this one. And ferns are a really cool plant because they have been around for many millions of years, actually before all the flowering plants. So if you like movies about dinosaurs and things, you probably see a lot of ferns in the background.
If you look up right at this tree, there's a cardinal sitting on the bush. He's making that beautiful song. He might be hard to see up against that white sky, but he's got that bright red coloring.
Y'all can let us know in the comments some of your favorite animals that might be at the garden. We're gonna head out towards our woodland trail where we're gonna look for more wildlife here. We've already got to see a goose and some birds. But we'd like to know what your favorite animals that we might see are.
We have 33 viewers.
These trees right here that we're walking past are the Japanese cedar trees. You can actually see some of the flaky bark on there. It's a little bit less flaky right now because it's wet, but you'll still see a little bit of flaking up on the bark. Cedar tree bark actually used to be used as a fire starter. They would kind of fluff it up, and then it will catch a spark very easily. So it could be used in traditional fire making. Oh, and we've got another little bird. A couple of them.
Yeah. In that bush right there. This tree is blooming really pretty. And then we've got some azaleas.
And so, if you look this way, you'll actually see a tree where the bark is missing from a part of it. That tree actually died, so it's called a snag. And a lot of times people will remove those from their garden. They think, oh, this is kind of an eyesore. They take it out of their garden. But they're actually a super important habitat for animals like woodpeckers and beetles and all different kinds of birds. Snakes will live in the holes of it. Raccoons, if it's a big enough tree. So lots of wildlife. So we will actually leave those stakes. And this is actually something fun that y'all can actually try at home. So on rainy days like this, it's really fun to look for animal tracks in muddy areas. You may be able to see them. I actually see a tiny little bit of a deer track here. That might be a deer's hoof. And you can actually also make your own tracks with your shoes if you want, walking in some mud. And that will help give you an idea of things that you can look for, like the size of the print and the spacing of the print.
Tell them not to walk inside with muddy shoes.
Alright, we've got our rain garden right over here.
So a rain garden is a really important feature that actually water that comes off, runs down this hill up here, gets caught up in the rain garden. So instead of running all into the river all at once, the rain garden slows it down, lets some of that water soak into the earth, and helps prevent erosion.
We'll see a few examples of erosion on this oak loop. There's a bluff just down this way. I'll point it out when we get there, and that is top 10 erosion.
So right here we're entering our Oak Loop Trail, so we're heading into the woods. Whenever you guys head into the woods, it's really good. You can start thinking about, does it feel different? Is it shadier? Is it cooler? And look, you'll see the plants change right away, because here we've got tree cover, so we're gonna start to get plants that do better with a little bit of shade on the ground. We're gonna start to see a thicker layer of leaf litter, which is actually also a really good habitat for animals. That's all these tiny little leaves on the ground. Oh, here's a really good plant. So I can't let y'all smell it over the video, but if you ever have something like this in your garden, this is heartleaf, and it's related to wild ginger. And you can actually pick one of these if it's in a place where it's okay for you to do that. For adults, it's okay to pick it. And if you tear it, it'll actually smell a little bit like licorice. And because they have that strong chemically smell that deer and certain animals don't like, you'll see these bright green ones even in winter. Deer will eat everything around it and they'll leave that heartleaf.
We've got some poison ivy over here. You guys see this hairy rope right here? That is actually poison ivy. Always be very wary of your surroundings when you're in the forest, because sometimes things disguise themselves. So just make sure you don't touch it. Leaves of 3 is poison ivy, but also a hairy rope like that, climbing up a tree.
And so right now is a great time, if you are able to get out, to go into a woods or a park or trail where it's safe for you to do that. It's a really good time to look for spring wildflowers. And these are the leaves from one that's actually just finished blooming, from trout lily leaves, all in here. And so a lot of wildflowers will try to bloom before the leaf cover gets in. So all these trees are gonna cover in leaves and the sunlight won't be able to get down. But if the flowers can bloom before that, they can get done before that light gets blocked out. Talk about the root ball, Miss Erica.
So this is from a tree. If you guys can come over here, you'll see the tree has fallen straight out of the ground, and it's laying right there. But this is so neat. You can see all of the roots and how they've broken off, and the bits of dirt and sediment stuck in between there. And where do you guys think that this tree was standing? Because if you look at the ground, it doesn't look like it was recently ripped out. It's pretty interesting. Broken off bits of root here, and then the little tiny pieces all around. And then, like, look, there's little pieces of grass and things like that growing still in it. So there's still life even after death. If you turn around, you can see little bits of leaves and grass and things like that growing out of the...
Let's see them while we're doing our tour so we can answer questions. So in these woods, we definitely have deer that live here. We also have coyotes you can have. We definitely have raccoons that we've seen on our trail camera footage. You'd probably have possums. We know we have hawks in the garden, owls in the garden. We haven't seen a coyote on our trail cameras yet, but we probably have coyotes here. We occasionally get otters and beavers up from the river, so some very cool animals that live here.
Do you guys see that knot on that tree right there? That big bulbous piece? So that's actually the tree's version of scar tissue. So it was injured right there and then it's grown out. So that's pretty interesting. Just how we get injuries and we scab up and we get scars, trees do the same thing. Have you guys ever come to one of our classes where you've seen us roll a log? So rolling a log is actually pretty interesting, because if you do it so in a safe manner, which I will demonstrate, you can see all of the critters that live underneath, the invertebrates, the worms, and even just the rich dirt and the soil that's created from those creatures underneath. So the most important thing to do is to make sure that you roll towards you, because anything living underneath there, you don't want it to have direct access to you. You want it to be facing away from you. So we're going to do that now, and then underneath we might be able to see something interesting. Do you see anything, Miss Barbara?
Not this time. Can't be lucky enough to have things under every log. You see, nope.
I do see some decomposition from the tree.
There we go. I don't know if Miss Leah can get a close-up on that little guy, but these little white-looking ant things, it's like right by the tip of my finger, that is a termite. So while termites might not be great in your house, they actually are good outside because they are decomposers, helping break down this log back into soil, which will then be good for plants to grow.
So over here we've got that bluff that I was discussing earlier. It's kind of hard to see from the safety of the trail because it does dip off further out. But if you can see it, you'll notice that there is a dip about 10 or 15 feet back, and it goes straight down. And that is caused from water and erosion. So sometimes water will flow through here. Right now you can see that there's not really any water in here. There is a very, very small amount of water to the left over there, if you could see that. So when it's fuller, that might attract more deer or other creatures that might want to get a sip of water, or animals that might want to hunt those creatures that want to get that sip of water. So it's a really good example of the ecosystem and how things all play a part.
Over here, we can actually try to roll one more log just in case we can get a critter for you today. Y'all can actually also see, we're on their way, this beech tree. A lot of times people like to carve into the beech tree, and that is really bad for the tree. The tree's bark is like skin. It protects the inside of the tree, and so it can get infected in those. But one thing that's cool to note is, if you carved into this tree, do you think it would stay right there? It actually does not. It actually does, I'm sorry. It doesn't move up as the tree grows. The tree actually grows from the top, which is kind of cool to think about, because I would have expected it to move up, but it doesn't. So right here, I'll watch where my fingers are and roll it toward me, just like Miss Erica showed you, and give us a chance to look for any little critters that might be underneath here.
Oh, there's one.
Oh yeah, so this is a roly-poly. So they're actually a really cool animal. Oh, you see it roll into a ball, that's its defense. They've got a hard exoskeleton on the outside, and when they roll into a ball like that, it actually protects themselves. And they're related to big isopods that live in the ocean. So they're closer related to crabs and crayfish than they are to something like a beetle, which is funny to think about because they live closer to where the beetles are here on land. And I thought I also saw a little Japanese millipede. No? Well, I see a snail shell. So, the snail is in there. So the snail's nice and hiding from me. And they're a really good example of that spiral shape in nature, which I think is really cool, how frequently that appears. What do we got there? Oh, yep, another little roly-poly. Couple of those. And a snail shell that looks like something's been eating it, actually. So, yeah. So that's some of the cool life and decomposers that we can learn about today.
So that first level of soil that we were looking at just now is called humus. And humus is, like I just said, the first level of decomposed dirt, things like that. So it's going to be living and non-living things that all come together and make that really rich soil. It's got big pieces and small pieces, and it all comes together and just helps things grow and get really full of nutrients and minerals and things like that.
We are walking here through some of our evergreen part of the garden, so you'll see a lot of those trees with the needles that keep their needle leaves all year long. On this side, we have a big vine. Well, it doesn't have the grape leaves right now. Oh, they're just coming in. But all of this is grape leaf vine. It does grow muscadine grapes. So if you eat grapes, this is kind of cool to see what it looks like that they would grow on. Muscadines are just a little bit more sour than the ones you would get at the store. But
it's also a really great place for birds to build their nests.
and I don't know if you can hear it over the recording, but we've got quite a few birds singing to us out today. So even though it's just a little bit overcast still from the rain, the wildlife is out and singing, which is nice. So it's coming up here to the banana tree pond. It is named for some little ornamental banana trees that we have over here that are just growing up just a bit, but it's also a really great place for us to see turtles and frogs and toads and occasionally some little red belly water snakes. Come on up to the front here and have a look. Oh, I just saw a frog hop in. Unfortunately, he's in the water now, so I don't know if we'll be able to get a picture of him. Does anyone have a pond or a river near where they live and they've seen any cool animals around it?
Sometimes it's hard to see the critters inside because the water can get a little murky, but you see the little rings appearing from things touching the water, and that's not rain, that's actually little tiny bugs.
We actually have a couple of vultures circling out, 3 of them circling up here. So that's kind of cool to see, gliding on the air currents, making those big circles. And then if y'all want to see this fern, it's bright green right now, but this is called resurrection fern. It's super awesome because if you came here during a very dry time, it would look all brown and dead. You would think probably that this fern had died. But actually it comes back to life when there's a new water. It's developed to survive periods of drought like that. So it's pretty cool.
If you guys want to come around to the other side of the tree, we've actually got a raccoon's house. There's a little hole up there, and if you guys come here early in the morning, if you get a chance, you might see him run around, but he does live in there. You might be able to get a better view of those vultures. We're kind of enclosed in tree canopies. They're flying pretty high up there.
Are they vultures or hawks?
I think they are vultures because I can see more of like the fingers and the tips of the wings. But it would help me tell if they would come a little bit different angle. A little hard to see in the bright sun. So right here we can actually go into this. So this is our shade garden. So the plants in here really like to grow in a more shady area where it has this tree cover, but they're also really tasty to deer. So we have this fence up not to keep people out, but actually just to keep deer out. So we'll go ahead and open it up and we can go in. look at flowers kind of growing underneath, below this plant. It's actually really cool.
A lot of times when people visit gardens, they spend a majority of their time looking at things eye level and below. But if you ever take the time to look above you as well, there are just as many things going on up there as there are on the ground. You'll see squirrels' nests, and like we saw earlier, the vultures circling. You'll see birds' nests and
Raccoon houses.
raccoon houses, of course. We've got bat boxes over here in the Great Lawn that we might be able to go see in just a minute. So there's tons of things and so much life going on above our heads that oftentimes we don't look up to see.
So one thing that's really cool about flowers that are like this, that are more tube shaped, is they are actually really good for hummingbirds because they will have that long beak that can actually get into the back of a very tube shaped flower like that. Other than hummingbirds, there's one other animal that's not an insect that's a really important pollinator. Does anybody want to tell us in the comments what they think it is? I'll give you just a few minutes to type it in there and then I'll tell you. So it is actually the bat. And although most of the bats in North Carolina eat insects, bats in other places, actually, there's a lot of fruit-eating bats, and they help pollinate a lot of the different kinds of tropical fruits and things that we like. Well, here there's some really beautiful hellebore flowers. I think that's how you say that.
There were some green ones over there. Quite pretty.
In our shade garden, we have a lot of variegated plants, and that's just the term for plants where they have different colors of leaves like that. It's actually pretty rare in nature, but gardeners really like to breed that, plants that have those different colors. But it can happen either because a plant just develops that way, or because a plant has different kinds of viruses in the plant that can cause that. But sometimes we cultivate that on purpose because of just the really beautiful look that it has. So, cool to have. Yeah, so you can see Cross Creek down there on our left. And we are actually coming to a spot where we can get an even better view of Cross Creek, I think.
Here we are.
So this is Cross Creek Overlook. Cross Creek does run into the Cape Fear River. And it does actually flood all the way up over these banks, over where we're standing, and sometimes in big storms actually into the basement of our building up there. Oh, nice. Oh, yeah. Oh, it may be hard to see on the, but we did just get a couple of white-tailed deer running up the side of the cliff out here. So that's pretty awesome to know they're out here. These, Cross Creek and the Cape Fear River both do flood pretty significantly, and if you think about it, it's really because water that is running through a city like Fayetteville, there's a lot of concrete, so the water runs off quickly into the streams and rivers, and that can make the water level rise really rapidly. So one thing that we can all do in our yards, if you have a yard at home, is to keep areas that are free from concrete where water can soak into the earth, and that will help slow that down. And I think we might end with this really beautiful river view that we have here, and hope to see you guys on some later videos. All right,
Bye,
bye.
guys. Thanks for joining us.